Hello again, everybody, and you may notice that this is not my standard uh, time to post things. This is also not a standard video. Um, this isn't a random vlogging or D&D High or my patrons videos. All of those I still have to do. Um, this is something that I want to say um, because I had an epiphany fairly recently, and I'd like to basically speak to everyone and kind of explore this topic, and that is the hashtag YesAllWomen. When I first started seeing this stuff, um, I thought it was interesting. I didn't understand what it was in response to, uh, and none of it was really that offensive to me, and all of it, I had seen similar things mentioned like that before. Um, but it kept going on and on and on. And I finally, due to a Facebook post, finally found out what it was in reference to. And I was absolutely blown away. Not because of what happened. This may sound callous, but bad things happen all the time. People die all the time. Um, I've just gotten used to it. I've lived in places bad enough to know that people die on a regular basis. And if you focus too much on death, that's all that you ever think of. The thing that kind of blew me away was the thought process behind why these people died. Um, and not so much the killer's thought process, because that was the mind of a very, very damaged creature um, that really had some incredibly massive problems that needed to be dealt with. Um, and the the person was massively broken. And the thought process that they came up with in order to justify their existence was wrong, 100% wrong. And there's absolutely no reason that it should have happened. But the thing that blew me away was the responses that I started seeing everywhere. Responses to the Yes All Women hashtag. Like if you see something like that and they have a fair amount of followers, if you read the comments, you'll see the exact same thing. I saw uh, comments on the article I read, um, and a lot of them had something very similar. Uh, all of them had something in common, which was the idea that they started basically pitying uh, the creature that did this. Um, and saying, had a girl taken pity on him and showed some sort of affection, that none of this stuff would have happened. And the mere fact that anyone in the world could come up with that logic blew my mind, because what happened had nothing to do with the people that had rejected this person. Nothing to do with them, and it had everything to do with the fact that this person was massively messed up and did something horrendous for reasons that shouldn't make sense to anyone, because they're not valid reasons. They don't make sense because they're not true. He basically took 2 plus 2 and got 77. It doesn't work that way. And yet I don't know how large this group is. A lot of times I assume it's just a very loud, very small minority. But these posts just kept coming up everywhere, and I started realizing how big of an issue this was that I never knew, because I've never had to deal with it. Ever. And most of that is because of who I am. I am 6'4". I weigh about 260 pounds. And I've been this big for a few years. Um, I've spent the last decade and a half studying as many different martial arts as I can. There are not situations, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where someone has been able to take away my ability to choose what I want to do because they had more power than I do. I'm too big, I'm too well educated for that to happen. Um, and so I never knew what it was like to have to worry about situations like that, where to have to worry about if you know, if I were to dress a certain way, or if I was to walk in a certain neighborhood. I've lived in bad neighborhoods. I lived in one of the worst neighborhoods around. Rampant gang warfare, one of the highest levels of human trafficking in the country. I lived down the street from that. Um, I was woken up by gunfire on more than one occasion. Um, but that's a completely different situation than what I'm starting to understand a lot of women go through on a regular basis. Um, and I guess the main thing I want to mention is the fact that there is no possible way that I can emotionally understand what it's like to live in a world like that, because I can't experience that. The society that I live in and uh, the person that I am, I will never be able to understand that because I will never live it, and it doesn't make sense to me because that's not who I am, and there's no way for me to really experience that, short of massive amounts of surgery and other procedures that I don't want to even think about. Um, and it's a sobering experience to realize things like the friend zone has become another thing. And I did a video on the friend zone a while back, and it was at that point that I realized that something must be wrong because I couldn't understand why people were having such a large problem with it. And I didn't realize why until I saw what happened today, where someone can take this idea of the quote unquote friend zone and use it to condone a horrendous, horrible act like this. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and that's never been what I've considered this friend zone thing that I've talked about before. I've never been under the assumption that I'm entitled to anything for being a nice person. For me, my understanding of it was not the fact that I was entitled to anything. It was the fact that I wasn't allowed to be in the running. Um, and even had I been given the chance and taken out of this quote unquote friend zone, there was no guarantee that anything would ever happen. That has been my view of it, was just the fact that I wasn't even allowed to run the race, and that's what upset me. I never in a million years thought that I was entitled to some sort of affection or some sort of relationship simply because I was a decent human being. And I didn't realize that that's what other people thought the friend zone meant, because that doesn't make any sense to me. There's no way that I can logically connect the dots that can make that a true statement, that somehow by being a nice person you're entitled to some sort of gratification becoming. That's never made sense to me, and that's why I was so confused before and somewhat offended when people claimed that that's what I was doing while I was defending it, was that, you know, this horrible thing, and somehow I was preaching male entitlement. That's never occurred to me. Um, that's just not how my brain works. So yeah, this has been really eye opening for me and really interesting. And I guess the this very long video, the whole purpose of it is basically to just point out that men in general and I'm speaking specifically to men, I don't think we can understand what women are going through right now, because 99.9 repeating percent of us will never be in that kind of a situation. We'll never have the experience of being screwed if you do, screwed if you don't. We'll never be in a situation where if you try and stand up for yourself, you will be beaten down basically by a society that's completely misunderstanding everything about the situation. We simply will never be in that situation, and therefore we cannot understand what it is that these people have gone through. And part of that is really upsetting to me, because I'm the kind of person that wants to learn everything. I want to understand everybody. That's always how I've been. And knowing that there is just something that more likely than not I will never be able to fully emotionally understand. Like intellectually, I can I can see where they're coming from, but I'm never going to truly understand it, because that will never happen to me. Is a sobering thought. So yeah, I've been rambling a little bit, but this is something I wanted to get out there. Basically, say I whether or not I support every single statement that's been made with the Yes All Women tag is irrelevant at this point. I completely support the idea of it. I completely support any woman that decides to post something about it, and I quite simply will never understand what it is that you have to go through on a regular basis. But I will do everything in my power to make sure that I am not the kind of person that perpetuates something like that. And I'm not the kind of person that creates excuses that lets it keep going. Um, so yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Um, if you have comments about it, positive, negative, whatever, put them in the comments below. Um, I will be watching this video very closely, and will be deleting any comments that I deem are inappropriate to the situation. And you can say whatever you want to me about that, because it's my channel. I can do whatever I want. But yeah, yeah, I support the Yes All Women hashtag, and I think the only way to stop things like this from happening anymore is for men to get together, admit that we're never going to understand what it is that these women go through, because we don't have to go through it, and to make a pledge that we are going to actively fight the ideas that keep things like this happening and keep this kind of oppression going on. Again, that's all for me. I will see you guys later, probably with D&D High stuff tomorrow. So, bye-bye. Good night.